In this video, I'm going to teach you how to use your rotary tool, ruler, and cutting mat. And later on, we'll show you how to use a Stripology ruler. I'm Katie of Modern Textiles, and I love all things sewing, specifically modern quilts and long arm quilting. All right, so today I'm going to show you how to use your rotary tools. And I just thought I'd go over the basics. One, I have my rotary cutting mat beneath here. It's well loved, well used. I use an Olfa 24-inch by 36-inch cutting mat. You can get them from Fiskars. I've got one actually ready to kind of replace this one when I finally decide it's time. But just so you know, with these self-healing mats, they self-heal, but you do need to put water on them and then just wipe it down with a moist rag, and that'll help keep it healing, okay? Then I've got my Famore 45mm rotary tool, rotary cutting tool, as well as a little Fiskars. I think this is a 15mm cutting tool. There are a variety of sizes and different types of cutting tools, just really depending on what you want to spend on it. They can be pretty expensive. I just got this one gifted to me from a friend, and I'll link it below, but you know, I've gone for decades using a Fiskars 45mm. You can get them for pretty cheap, and they're just easily replaceable. There's also different types with a different grip, so that way it's a little bit more ergonomic. You know, just really search out there, see what's going to be best for you, and go that route. The thing with this Famore, it's got internal bearings, so it just really glides really nicely when you're cutting with a fresh blade, or even the blade itself is very long lasting. And I have not tested it out yet, but they do accept the blades back to be resharpened, and then they'll ship them back to you. So for this tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and just show you with the 45mm. This is my pretty standard one I use. The little guy, this one's great for curves or fine piecing that you're trying to work on. But the 45mm is going to be your most common one. All right. So I'm actually going to be working on cutting out for an upcoming tutorial here on our confetti quilt, which is a free pattern. So when you are working on cutting fabric, you want to make sure that you have your fold and then your selvage on one end, okay? Typically, if you'd like, you could line up the selvage so it lines up together, and then refold, repress if that's what you want to do. I just typically leave the fabric in its state right off the bolt, okay? So whatever fold is in it from the bolt, I typically just leave it that way. I find it easiest. I like to move quickly when I'm working, rather than going through the hassle of relining up the selvage and that way squaring up maybe the pattern. But it really depends on what your expectations are for yourself as a quilter. Next thing I want to do, I should go over the rulers with you. One, you're going to see there's plenty of acrylic rulers that come in all shapes and sizes depending on what you're using them for. I've got a little 12.5 inch by 12.5 inch square. But really, I think I went my first couple of decades quilting with just this 6.5 inch by 24-inch ruler. It came in a set. I think I got the whole package together. 24-inch by 18-inch cutting mat, this ruler that I still use to the day, and then a Fiskars 45mm rotary tool. All right, so moving forward, the nice thing about having your acrylic ruler being the same width as your cutting mat is that way you know that you can have your ruler edge from edge to edge on your cutting mat. So I'm going to go ahead and just square off this chunk of fabric, which looks like I've got maybe 6.5. Yeah, if I go from the 6.5 line, I'm going to show you two different ways to cut. One way, which is pretty common and the best way I'd say for beginners to start off with, is going to be just using your ruler on the mat as well as just lining up your edge. If you're finding it really tough to decipher where your ruler is, you can always, like this right now, I'm just going back 1/2 inch on my acrylic ruler to the 6-inch line on the mat, and then that way I can perfectly see it's lined up, ready to go. This is another option. If you find it tough to really press down and not have your ruler shift, there are some contraptions out there where it's essentially a suction cup on 2 suction cups. It's got a handle, and that way it'll allow for you to put a little bit more pressure on it and just be a little bit more ergonomically friendly. So I've got my edge of the ruler is on the 6.5-inch line. I now take the safety lock off of my my rotary tool here. Okay, I always make sure it's guarded. Those blades are extremely sharp. All right, and then from there, you can remove your fabric. And I like to just toss this into my little scrap bin back here. Keeps all my offcuts. And from here, I know that my pattern that I have, pulled up on the screen there, I need to make a bunch of 2.5-inch width of fabric cuts. Okay, so I'm just going to do a couple with my ruler here. This is going to be pretty standard for any beginner quilter to have in their arsenal. So I cut on the 6.5-inch line here on my mat, and then I'm going to go to the 9-inch line. All right. And then there you go. So that is the easiest way to just make one cut. Okay. Now, since I have you here, I might as well show you kind of a new toy that I got this last year. I've eyed them up for a while. They are a pretty expensive notion to have, but being myself as someone who quilts professionally, makes a lot of quilt tops throughout the year, it seemed like it was a gift I asked for the holidays, but it definitely is a great investment. And now that I have one, I use it all the time whenever possible, is this Stripology ruler. This is the XL from Creative Grids. And the really nice thing is, it's tough to see, but there's lines that are cut through. So essentially, you can run your 45mm blade through any of these lines. I'll go on knot location here. And then that way you can cut perfectly 2.5-inch strips. You've got the stars here denote 1.5-inch. So that way you don't have to think and do all the math of, okay, I was at 1.5, now to 3, to 4.5. And then it also has squares denoting your 2.5-inch strips. Those are the most commonly used strip cuts. So there you have it. I'm going to go ahead and, as you can see, my Stripology ruler isn't quite the same width as the fabric I have, right? So the best way to go about this is then fold this in half, and we may need to do just a quick trim up of that edge again, just to make sure we're fully in the clear. So what I'm doing here is, once again, lining up on one of my lines, and I'm just extending over one of the grid lines just enough to clean up that outside edge to make sure that I have that first strip starting with a full 2.5-inch strip. Okay, so from here, I'm going to lay my Creative Grids Stripology ruler down, and then they've got cross lines, cross grids on the ruler itself. So I'm just making sure this white one here is following my 5-inch line, which is a little bit bolder. And then I'm also double checking that my verticals are all lining up. And same with the top, making sure everything is squared before I start cutting. Okay. So once again, I'm going to be cutting quite a few of these 2.5-inch strips, and we'll go from there. So starting off at the 0, I'm just going to hold down this outside edge, keeping my hands out of the way. Once again, these are very, very sharp tools, okay? And then move on to the 2.5, which is denoted by that square. Then to the next square, which is a 5, 7.5, and there you have it. All right, and I know my blade is getting dull, so I should send this into Fumore and make sure it gets sharpened. Otherwise, I can use another type of 45mm blade on here until I get that one back. So if you ever notice that your pieces are starting to connect with threads across the way, that'd be the sign that you want to go ahead and get a new blade for your rotary tool. You can swap these out by just, once again, holding down. A lot of people didn't realize that you can swap out the blades. You don't just have to toss out the whole tool itself, but usually there's going to be, as you can see from up top there, you'll just have to unwind the back nut. And then the center pin will come out, and there you have your rotary tool or your blade. Okay. I like to, just a quick tip is I like to make sure I keep an old rotary blade case, and then that way when my old ones get worn out, I just put it in there and then I toss them out. That way there's no possibility of it shredding through the trash bag and injuring yourself. The other thing is, if you do any type of apparel fabric or apparel making, you can use those dulled rotary blades and use them for cutting out your paper templates. They're still sharp enough for paper, but they're just not sharp enough for fabric, right? So use them, give them a second life by reusing them for cutting out paper templates, whether it's for apparel or stocking or a large format type item there. If you like what you learned today, please hit the like and subscribe button below. And then I hope to see you at the next video where we learn how to do our free scrap quilt.